want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And welcome to the summer edition of the Numbers Game. Notice our casual apparel.
A casual fare.
Indeed. I'm David Camioner. This is Tim Blessing, Dr. Tim Blessing. And you're welcome. You're a what? A proctologist, I think?
I believe I'm a proctologist of history.
Good. Maybe it was your hobby turned into a profession.
Knows.
Yeah. Anyway, and we're here this time to talk about two things, to put our tails on the line and do some prognosticating, specifically about the upcoming debate. Hopefully you will see this Tuesday or Wednesday before the Thursday debate coming up between former President Trump and Mr. Biden. I guess I should say President Biden. Okay, yeah, he's president. And we're also going to talk a bit about the conventions. The next one will be about 6 weeks from now, in kind of in August. And convention will probably have happened by then. Both conventions happen in before August. Both in July,
they're actually early this year.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But first things first. So what we're going to do, of course, is do smoking and drinking, which, of course, we think is a lost art in American politics.
Well, when was the last time we had a smoke-filled room convention?
I know, and they went so much better. Think of where was Harding in 20? Was that New Jersey? Where was Harding in 20? Atlantic City?
Harding was in Ohio.
No. Where was the convention in 20?
I don't think I can answer that.
I think it's Atlantic City, and I only know that through watching Boardwalk Empire, but I could be mistaken. Maybe Chicago. I absolutely don't know. I'm completely faking it now. By the way, these are Monte Cristo White Series. Just a little 45-minute smoke here. And a couple things I picked up in Germany, recent jaunt there.
We have professional people who measure how long a cigar will last.
Oh, yeah, well, if that's the only way I'm probably a professional in that regard. And you don't take the bands off. And you really not going to do the bands? Okay.
I take the bands off when it heats up a little bit more and they come off easier.
See, I think when it heats up a little, the glue gets there. Anyway, by the way, yeah, we're talking politics. We're talking cigars. And whiskey is so much more interesting than politics and so much more important to American culture, if you ask me. By the way, little cool thing I picked up in Germany. One side is the V-cut, one side straight cut. So cool. It's all over here because Tim is messy. So we're going to do it this way. This is going to be straight cut, I believe. And, of course, it takes two of my hands. And, yes, it is a straight cut. So, all right. So we'll start this, baby. There you go, Tim. Don't burn down the mic, Tim.
Well, I only have burned down one house this year so
far.
far.
That's good. It's better than your average. Can you do that? Yeah, you got that? All right, good. All right, so now we have tobacco.
You selected a fine cigar this time, David.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And cheers to you. It's like 10 in the morning here, so whiskey and cigars makes sense.
No, it's a little bit late to start in on whiskey, but what the hell.
So what are we talking about today? Well, I mentioned before, we're going to start out with debates. Start out with past debates to give you a little context, and then go from there to the debate upcoming. And then after that, talk about the conventions, because all these things will happen before the next time we record one of these. Now, first one we're going to do was not a presidential debate. The other ones were, but it set the tone for many other debates. And we are talking the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Timothy?
Yeah, and what happened to Lincoln-Douglas is Douglas was actually the leader of the country. The president was James Buchanan, but Douglas...
Okay, back up here. Yeah, so Buchanan was president.
Buchanan's president. It's 1858.
Okay.
Douglas has to be reelected.
And this is for the Senate in Illinois.
In Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Buchanan's the only president from Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly.
Well, unless you want to count Joe Biden.
Gee, I forgot about. Well, nice call on that. Do I have to count him? I guess I do.
So Lincoln was a nobody. He was a prominent attorney, mostly a business attorney.
He'd been in Congress a term or two.
He was in Congress for one term, probably about 10 years earlier.
Really was a nobody.
And then he didn't stand for re-election.
Why not?
because he had an agreement with two other people that they would rotate the office seat, and then it all fell apart because the Whigs went south.
Ah.
So anyway, so Lincoln's basically a nobody, probably not a poor nobody, but a nobody. And he challenges Douglas, the leader of the country, to a debate, and for some damned reason, Douglas accepted.
Why would he do this?
It was insane.
Wasn't there?
I
was
think
there a
Douglas,
romantic rivalry for Mary Todd or something involved in that?
well, there have been allegations along that line, but I really think it was just the fact that Douglas was an arrogant son of a bitch.
All right.
We're going to talk about him later on, but not. But anyway, so what happened is they went to the second debate, and Lincoln turned to Douglas, and the Supreme Court had just ruled that you could take slaves any place to Maine, and he turned to Douglas and he said, "Is there any way to keep slaves out of a place?" So what? So an absolutely crushing question, because if Douglas says there is a way, then he ticks off the South. Mm-hmm. If he says there isn't a way, then he ticks off the North.
True.
So he's caught in a jam. So what he says is, well, legally you can't keep slaves out, but if you don't give slavery protection, then you can't have slaves there. So he thought he would please the North by saying you can keep slaves out by not giving them protection, and it please the South by saying slavery is legal everywhere. And as you and I know from long time in politics, when you try to have it both ways, you don't get it either way. And as a result, Douglas's hope for this presidency was basically ended at that point.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Now when I was growing up, history geek that I am, I certainly read about it, but did not know about it to that level of specificity. So thank you for that, Tim. Thank you very much. We'll go from that, the first presidential debate that I guess in the modern era, 1960, Richard Nixon versus John Kennedy. Now, and you've probably heard this before if you follow politics or history. Everybody that listened to that debate on the radio said Richard Nixon won. But because he was a vice president, he had the command of facts, he was a genius when it came to foreign policy, etc. But Jack Kennedy looked very good.
Well, they had smeared stuff on Nixon's face to make him look better. It didn't work.
Well, the thing about poor Dick Nixon is, one, he sweated. And the Kennedy people paid, typical Democrat Kennedy chicanery, had paid people in the studio to turn off the lights on. That's number one. Two, Nixon, for some reason, wore kind of a light suit, and anybody knows dark is an authority color. Right. You want your president, not to be, looking like an ice cream salesman. So he looked like that. Also, we of course knew about the Nixon famous 5 o'clock shadows. He had all that going. And Kennedy looked cool, calm, collected, as Marshall McLuhan said. TV was a cool medium, and Kennedy, really looked good. He looked presidential. He looked very in control. And Nixon sounded great, but did not look good. And what happens? Boom. Kennedy takes, and it was still obviously a close race. In fact, a race Nixon probably legitimately did win, and suddenly Kennedy gets a serious boost. And it is at least my opinion, it is the beginning where glitz, sizzle, as opposed to steak, took over presidential politics.
Right. In fact, Nixon will go so far as to go out and keep a tanning lamp.
Dear God.
So that he wouldn't look like that anymore. So that says how much sizzle had taken over.
Mm-hmm. Here, that's, say what you want about the Kennedys, like them or not. Like, I'm not a big fan, but okay. But of course, Jack Kennedy today would be considered a dangerous conservative. But the one thing you got to say for them is they were ruthless. Absolutely. In fact, so was the modern incarnation, ruthless, trying to sell himself as a populist when he's a far left lawyer.
Right.
But yeah, interesting people, and hopefully we'll see the last of them in the political sense this election cycle. Tim.
Yeah, sometimes it's like we saw in the Reagan clip we just saw. One line defines something.
And that Reagan clip that we led with you guys, that was amazing stuff.
Yeah, and probably the best punch I've ever seen thrown in a political debate.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned earlier that Mondale knew right there.
Right that moment. He said, Mondale always said, that moment I knew I wasn't going to be president.
Yeah, wasn't going to be president. Yeah, exactly.
But that brings us down to the Dukakis, the Kitty Dukakis debate, in which Dukakis is asked, for those of you who don't know who Dukakis was, he was the Democratic vice presidential nominee in 1988.
No, Dukakis was the presidential nominee in You said vice.
I'm sorry.
And he was the governor of Massachusetts.
Yes, he was governor of Massachusetts, and he had been a very strong opponent of the death penalty. And so he's asked by one of the moderators,
Bernie Shaw of CNN.
Bernie Shaw, and says, and he says, if your wife, Kitty Dukakis, were raped and murdered, how would you feel about the death penalty? And Dukakis gave not an impassioned answer, which I think I would if somebody asked me what would happen if my wife were raped and murdered. But he gave this highly technocrat. He sounded like a computer talking, for God's sakes. You could see the cogs turning through his eyes.
Smoke your cigar. You're babbling, and there's no cigar being smoked.
Well, actually, I need the lighter there.
Okay, remember, we're examples, especially young people.
Yeah,
out there.
we really do have to uphold our standards.
Yeah, exactly. It's kids, if you're watching out there, when you become 21, cigars and whiskey in the morning are very essential to understanding the political process. So, Tim.
Yeah, and if you want to be a good politician, you have to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
there's an interest.
Yeah, and there will be times if you go into politics, and of course, they won't be at some of these fundraisers that are squeaky clean. But when the boys get together, and boys not just being men in the gender sense, but men of all genders in politics, shall we say, and you get together and the whiskey's flowing, the reporters aren't there and stuff. Yeah, a lot of people light up cigars, and a lot of people drink whiskey.
Yeah, so
you were saying.
So anyway, Mondale gives this wonky, technocratic answer, and like most of the women and all of the men watching were going, "Oh my God, is there a human being inside this thing?" Dukakis managed to
Didn't the crowd even gasp or something?
What's that?
Didn't the crowd at the gasp?
The crowd behind Bernie Shaw. So
I mean, absolutely. So and that people, the Bush campaign had portrayed him as kind of a technical geekocrat.
Oh, there was a picture of him in a tank.
Yeah,
which
I remember
he looked like a mannequin, for God's sake.
No, I thought he looked like Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine in that tank. And then, of course, the Willie Horton.
Obviously very uncomfortable.
Yeah, the Willie Horton thing. So that was not Mike Dukakis' greatest moment. And we're going to finish up the past debates, and I'm going to talk about Trump in 2016. Now, we saw what Trump did to his primary opponents. I mean, he just schoolyard bullied them. I mean, it was like watching an 8-year-old beat up on 5-year-olds, but it was effective. And these guys weren't even guys as sharp as Ted Cruz were not expecting this, and Trump just bulldozed them. And they, a lot of them, responded well, but in an intellectual sense, not playing to the populist rebellion that Trump was leading. And he just, he ran over them. And in 2016, when he got to Hillary Clinton, I think Hillary thought, oh, my God, this guy's going to be so easy. I saw what he did to Republicans in the primary. I'm not going to be a victim of that. And she was. I mean, we all remember the debate. What was the line that Hillary actually said before Trump said, you'll be in jail? What was that?
I don't.
You guys probably remember it better than I do. Something, what are you going to do in the next administration, or this and that, or blah, blah, blah. And the consequence of that, Trump said, well, you'll be in jail. And the crowd laughed, applauded, and Hillary had no idea. And I mean, she just
clueless.
It was like watching Dempsey Furpo,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, she was just punched out of the ring.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know Dempsey Furpo,
sorry.
Jack Dempsey, this back in the 1920s, knocked a very strong boxer completely through the ring ropes.
Yeah, I think it was 29. It could be, no, it probably was earlier, maybe 27, but could be mistaken. But yeah, literally just Floyd Furpo? No, that can't be right. Chester Furpo? I'm not sure. We'll have to look that up. But anyway, it was just, and from that point on, I mean, you could almost compare it a little to 88. I mean, I think from that point on, for me, and I think for a lot of people, we knew Trump was good, but the timing there was just exquisite. He took his 2 beats, and he just, oh my God, it was perfect stuff. And Trump, he looks like a buffoon sometimes, an oaf, but he is capable of subtlety. I mean, that wasn't subtle, but it was well timed. Look what he just did to Larry Hogan in Maryland. That was beautifully subtle. And
took him out.
Yeah, I mean, we're here in Maryland, Annapolis, Maryland. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Trump, this is a very blue state. Trump is anathema even to a lot of Republicans here. Hogan was very popular here. And what did Trump do? Trump endorsed Hogan.
Yeah, and Hogan and he have a history.
Yeah, they have a history. And, of course, that let the Democrats say, oh, look, he's a Trump-endorsed candidate, when Hogan was doing everything he could to run away from Trump. So, yeah, I thought before that Hogan had a real good shot, and I still hope he does. I mean, I think was a really good governor, really great governor. Want him to be senator very, very badly, but it's going to be a tougher road. He still has a shot, but it's going to be a tougher road after that endorsement. So, all right, let's go.
We got a convention coming up.
Yes, yes, yes. No, we're going to do the convention at the end. We have a presidential debate coming up.
We have, yes,
So
presidential.
let's
Sorry.
talk. Let's
Yeah.
talk about. And see, we're doing this on Saturday. So this Thursday coming up is the first Biden Trump debate. Where is that? Atlanta, I think.
I can't answer that.
Yeah, I believe it's in Atlanta. It's Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, I believe, as moderators. And the Trump campaign acquiesced to rules that didn't seem to benefit it. Why did they do that?
You know, I can only have the theory that they think that Biden is going to get up there and drool, and he's going to be stiff. He is going to be stiff. But the Trump camp is taking a tremendous gamble that the guy who gave that forward, moving State of the Union address, aggressive, is not going to be able to make it through a debate.
Is Trump going to get his drug test? He's not going to get those hard. Is he?
If you were president of the United States, would you take a drug test?
No. Yeah, but Trump might make some points on the matter that he didn't get his drug test. But anyway, and I think what we're talking about here is the expectations game to a large extent. I mean, if Biden doesn't wet himself, if he doesn't come on with a drool bucket, if he doesn't come on in a walk, or if he doesn't start talking about Mad King Ludwig of Bavaria somewhere when he's talking about the border, then he's going to win. Because what the Dems and the media are setting up is the comeback kid scenario. Oh, he's down in these states. Oh, he's down in battleground states, blah, blah, blah. But look what he did in the debate. Oh, my God, he butchered Trump, especially. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a commentator after the debate. I'll say, I know that the commentators will say the following. Well, Joe Biden certainly proved he was up to it tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless of what happened.
Yeah, no matter what happens, the scripts have already been written. Joe Biden showed he could step in the ring with Donald Trump, take the punches, and keep on going. Now, the only thing that could get interesting there, if Joe Biden is drugged up, and I believe he will be, B12, God knows what else, he could get a little weird manic. He could push it a little too far. He could do the get off my lawn speech at Trump, And if that happens, that could also help with Trump if Trump doesn't take the bait. If Trump mellows out, he goes after Biden, but if Biden is going to hang himself, being too weird, aggressive, let him hang himself. Number one. Number two, they're going to throw out, they are, January 6th and Trump's problem with the entire election of 2020. They want Trump to talk about it because it makes them look
How
crazy.
can you talk about that? Look what you did on January 6th.
Exactly. It's going to the January 6th stuff and the 2020 contention is going to make Trump, backward looking, revengeful looking, everything Trump says he's not, everything the Dems say he is. If Trump cannot take that bait,
if he blows up.
Yeah, and then he can hold his own legitimately because the media sweepstakes are all wonderful. We know them. What Tim and I say here are all wonderful. What matters are what voters say, especially the small amount of swing voters, but also get out the vote, enthusiasm levels, this and that. If Trump screws up, and remember, the media is going to say Biden won no matter what, but if Trump screws up somehow, the Biden people, who right now are not that enthusiastic, will be jazzed.
Well, yeah, there are very few enthusiastic Bidenites out there. But a lot of people are going to vote for Biden in part because he's not Trump. And what Trump needs to do, assuming he can do it, is keep steady and show that he's presidential, or at least somewhat presidential. He's never going to stop being Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But we don't need what happened in the first debate in 2020, where it looked like Trump should have been administered a saliva test. We don't really need Trump does not need to prove that he's the toughest guy on the block. He's already proven that.
Yes, he has. Now, we were talking earlier, the three things I see Biden has as advantages going in: one, incumbency; two, Democratic chicanery; and three, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Yep.
And Trump has the advantages going in: one, the border; two, the economy, and you can also see national security there; and four, you might say, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
So given that clash, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Legitimate analysis, and again, we're prognosticating here, legitimate analysis, who comes out on top?
I really truly believe that Donald Trump will not be able to hold his temper. That's the joker in the deck from the Republican point of view. And so I'm going to say that I suspect that on an objective fashion that Biden's going to win, because Biden may not win, Trump may lose.
Gotcha. Which is what happened in the 2020 election.
2020 election, yeah. Particularly that first debate.
If you think about it, if the Republicans had nominated anybody, and Donald Trump is the fair and square nominee. But Donald Trump, given that Trump leads on issues everywhere, just going away. If it was DeSantis, if it was Haley, it was almost anybody else. Yeah, you might not have the enthusiasm that Trump people do, though with DeSantis, I think you would. But the Republican would be leading if it was anybody by Donald Trump and Donald Trump's baggage by at least double digits, right?
Well, you know, just look at it this way. In a regular debate, let's say a Kennedy-Nixon debate, Nixon would come back and say, well, President Kennedy, you know, about Bay of Pigs, you really lost that. In this case, they can come back and say, you know, Iran would not have attacked Israel if Donald Trump had been in the White House.
You mean Hamas?
Hamas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, you know, they used to say about Nixon, one of the issues with him was that everybody knew, you know, when he was in office, he was a genius in foreign policy, but he was unpredictable.
He was unpredictable.
He read history. The man knew what happened at Congress of Vienna, Congress of Berlin. The man, and of course, with Kissinger, the man was really, really sharp. And one of the great things about Donald Trump, probably not well-versed in history like that, is that he was unpredictable. Plus, Donald Trump liked to do deals. I mean, could you imagine Joe Biden hanging out with a dictator in North Korea? You could not. Could you imagine Joe Biden hanging out with Putin? You could not. Now, taking the moral aspects of that aside, Trump wanted to do deals. And let's, you know, the world, and I'm probably quoting something here, I think it's one from the Jack Ryan movies, specifically from Clear and Present Danger. The world is not black and white Boy Scout, as Ritter says to Jack Ryan. The world is gray.
Well,
Trump understands that.
You know, but even if you're Hamas, you're Hezbollah, you're Iranian. Guess what? Trump took out Soleimani. And they have to worry about, foreign powers have to worry about whether or not what Trump will do next, because you don't know.
Exactly. There's an old, going back to Nixon a little, an old story that may or may not be true, that when we wanted something at the Vietnam negotiations in Paris, that Nixon, by Hanoi time, would call Le Ducteau, whoever, and pretend to be drunk. And
Really? I didn't know this.
Oh, yeah. Again, it might be apocryphal. He'd call up, 2 or 3 minutes, sound slurry, drunk, this, and that, and hang up the phone. And people knew Nixon did like his gin, I think. And then 5 minutes later, Kissinger would call and say, "You got to give me this. You've got to give me this. The man is out of control. You know, he'll nuke Haiphong tomorrow. He's drunk. You don't understand. If you don't give me this at the Paris negotiating table, everything goes off the table. You don't understand the kind of madman I'm dealing with here." And Le Ducteau, whoever, would go, "Oh, dear God," and they would get whatever they wanted in small little salami bits at the Paris negotiating table. Now, again, maybe I've read it a couple of times, heard it a couple of times from people in the know. May or may not have been true, but it's the unpredictability factor. They also said, by the way, after they made that call, they would clink glasses, have a drink, and go to bed. So, or if it was given the time, go on to the rest of their work. So the unpredictability factor, and Donald Trump, like him or not, has that. You don't know where he's going to go on a day-to-day basis, foreign policy, and in national security, and in other things too. And that is, you know, especially in regards to the Chinese, who like predictable. The Chinese love predictable. And if you can't get that, you know, it is going to be an issue. Joe Biden is tremendously predictable, if not compromised with the Chinese, the entire family being compromised with the Chinese, the Biden family. And thus, you know, it's just a no-brainer, obviously, as we just mentioned, on national security, obviously on the economy, obviously when it comes to the border, the big overriding issue. In fact, there is a quote, I believe, from Orwell in 1984 that said the first rule of the party, or what the party really wanted, was do not believe what you see and do not believe what you hear. And we can see what's happened to Joe Biden. No matter they're talking deep fake, these are all AI. No. We have seen for years now Joe Biden not being all there.
You know, that raises an interesting question. First off, I have not a clue why Trump accepted the debates under the ground rules that they laid down. But here's something else, too, you know, is you just took Hunter Biden off the table by convicting Trump. I don't know how Hunter Biden and the connections to the Chinese and all that are legitimate. That's a legitimate topic, or several legitimate topics. Now, if you bring up Hunter Biden, then do you get to come back and say, well, you're a felon? You know? And so that's going to be an issue, I think, for Trump.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to use the word felon.
They're going to use the word erratic, too.
We've seen the term 34 convictions, 34 all over the place. A friend of mine, a Dem consultant, told me that they are thinking of printing up like football jerseys with 34 on the back of them for the November election to bring that to home in that 34 number.
Right.
And look, I think we saw some polling, but I think in the back of people's minds, even swing voters and some Republican voters, perhaps Haley voters, it may not be dispositive, but there is going to be a concern. And it's not just because he was convicted, which is a concern, but also what happens afterward. Is the Democratic insurance plan after he's president, if he gets elected, to go after him again? And then, of course, are we talking Eugene Debs scenario? It's a guy running from jail. Because remember, of course, that
1920.
the sentencing is 4 days before the convention.
Yep.
So, and that leads us in.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, why is that sentencing 4 days before the convention? That's not by accident.
Yeah, exactly. Which leads us into the conventions.
Yeah.
And the Republican convention, if Trump gets the book thrown at him, and this guy Merchant is a highly partisan Democratic operative, so he could put Trump in jail. I have no doubt.
Well, the
he
Federal Election Commission is furious at him. I don't know if you saw the hearings, but they just said, well, the Federal Election Commission head said basically what we can't have 50 states in enforcing federal law because then you have 50 different interpretations of federal
That's
law,
right.
and that won't work. So they're really furious.
Yep.
And but Merchant is going to, I think, do as much as he can to throw the book at him without driving the Trump attorneys ask for an emergency stay.
He could keep him to New York or California.
Or California,
Not California, Florida. Put an ankle bracelet on him for God, and it goes everything he could do to constrain the campaign. At that point, did Trump have to run a McKinley campaign from his front porch? Who knows? Though there could be worse things in the world for Trump. But Merchant is gonna really go after him. So this happens. Trump gets the book thrown at him. And then what happens 4 days? Now, do the Haley people and some of the other people say, we can't have this? And is there stuff on the convention floor?
Yeah, are you
are
going to
we-
have a parade on the convention
Yeah,
floor?
it's going to be Wilkie and 40. Is there going to be weirdness? Is some Republican like Haley, like Hogan, that say we can't have a convicted felon, we can't have a guy that's confined to one state? That we've got to do something here. And if by chance, which I don't think is going to happen, Trump does not win a first ballot victory, then Katie bar the door.
Well, yeah, if Trump doesn't win, well, first off, though, Trump has pretty thoroughly taken over the Republican Party.
He has.
I mean, the state chairs, the national
Well,
chair,
his
the national chairs are
daughter-in-law
relative,
is the
for
national
God's sakes.
co-chair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I don't know that the delegates, even if you went to if you went to a second ballot, all those Trump delegates are free. And by the way, if it goes to a second ballot, which it's had since 1956,
Yep.
almost 70 years ago, would Trump begin to lose delegates? And I think the answer is yes.
I think
he
he'd
would.
bleed. He'd start to bleed.
Yeah.
And there'd be people.
And that would be the end.
There'd be dark horses like John Toon. There would be dark horses in the background. Paul Ryan, of all people, could be in the background there. That's going to be interesting. Now,
But Trump could say that the nomination was stolen from him
Sure he
and
could.
break with the Republican
oh, good. Oh, he
Party.
could pull a bull moose. He could pull a bull moose in a heartbeat. This guy. But let's talk about the Dems. Well, the Dems wanted Chicago. They got Chicago. But what they are going to get vis-a-vis Hamas supporters on college campuses, they might get Chicago 68.
You're looking. I mean, there's no reason to believe that Antifa and all the rest of those groups are going to be quiet. They're not going to be quiet. You're going to have
Absolutely.
demonstrators. You're going to have people with Palestinian flags. You're going to have people with those black hoods on. You're really looking at Chicago, of all places. You're really looking at a chance for complete chaos.
Yeah, and
And by the way, a mayor.
yeah, well, and I was just going to go into that. In '68, we had Daley there, and he let the boys in blue have their fun in the park, shall we say, with the various yippies that were trying to disrupt and did disrupt that convention. And of course, from the podium, who was it said Nazi tactics? Was that Abe Ribicoff or somebody?
It was Ribicoff.
Yeah. So now,
And
this time-
Ribicoff was Jewish.
yeah, exactly. Now you've got a mayor of Chicago. I forget his name, Brandon.
I've lost
Tell you
his
the
name.
truth, sorry. I can see him in my mind's eye, but can't bring up the fact. But he is a far left Democrat. He probably agrees with the Hamas terrorist supporters. So,
I would expect so.
so what if he tells the cops, don't hurt these poor kids, let them demonstrate? Well, these poor kids, with a lot of outside agitators, including probably some members of Chinese, Iranian, and Russian intelligence interspersed there, at least being paid by them, and Soros people like that. Is there a physical barrier between those people and the convention floor?
Well, think about this. In 1970, Nixon was speaking at an auditorium out in San Jose, California, and the demonstrators brought with them battering rams to bust their way into the convention center where Nixon was speaking. Are we going to see a replay of that? I'll bet we will.
I think we might too. And that's all for this edition of The Numbers Game. I'm David Camioner. This is
Tim Blessing.
and Dr. Tim Blessing. And we will see you in early August, and we'll find out whether we got this right or not.